We are resuming the recording for the midterm exam for Part A of U.S. History. Question number 31 on the exam: what was the impact of Samuel F.B. Morse's telegraph? It changed the nature of communication and commerce, it affected the political process by speeding up elections, or it created an increase in the number of disputes over property ownership. Number 32, who won both the popular vote and the plurality of electoral votes in 1824 but did not become president? Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, or John Quincy Adams? Number 33, which group describes the members of the Whig Party that opposed Andrew Jackson? Group A, who were small farmers and others that distrusted banks, were strong supporters of slavery, were proponents of westward expansion, and people who questioned the market economy? Or was it Group B, people opposed to slavery, merchants and bankers, moral reformers, especially with respect to Native Americans, and people who supported the market economy? Group A or Group B? Number 34, a crisis erupted in the 1830s over nullification. What was nullification? The idea that a state could declare federal legislation invalid, prevent its enforcement, and possibly secede. The result of a presidential veto that Congress failed to override. The Supreme Court declaring laws to be unconstitutional. Number 35, what 1830 legislation authorized relocation of the 5 civilized tribes from their lands in the east to others farther west? Was it the Indian Removal Act, the Native American Relocation Act, or the Cherokee Land Grant Act? Number 36, which group best captures the meaning of Jacksonian democracy? Group A, belief in the common man, racism, spoils system, belief in the Union, and disdain for elite classes? Or Group B, opposition to slavery, belief in strong federal fiscal authority, military leadership, elitism, and creating opportunities for women? Was it Group A or Group B? Why did people immigrate to the United States in the 19th century or the 1800s? Rich water sources, high wages, and labor protection? Or was it fertile land, jobs, and the chance for a better life? Or the last option, women's rights and religious freedom? Number 38, which does not describe the South in the early 1800s? Export of manufactured goods, wealth based on slave economy, or the widespread cotton production? Number 39, what do letters B and C identify on the map? Letters B right here and letter C right here. Were they lands that were part of the Mexican cession, lands given to the United States by Texas, or territories that became the states of California, Utah, and Colorado? For number 40, what does the green line identify? The green line right here on the map. Is that the Santa Fe Trail, the Columbia River, or the Oregon Trail? Number 41, which best explains the concept of manifest destiny? Political solutions to continental issues were inherently possible. The hope that settlers would be safe if they traveled in groups. The belief that it was God's plan for the nation to expand across the continent. Number 42, what were the basis for many of the early 1800s reform movements? Politics and pessimism, philosophy and nativism, or religion and optimism? Number 43, what did 19th century reformer Horace Mann advocate? A private school system that would be affordable for most citizens, a public school system to promote and protect democracy, a system of religious schools to promote Christian values. Number 44, what causes did Dorothea Dix work for in the early 19th century? Prison reform and care for the mentally ill, public and private education, temperance, and women's suffrage. Number 45, what was the purpose of the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments? To make the case for women's rights, to declare the emotional issues behind women's rights, or to ask men to join the crusade for women's rights. Number 46, which series of bills attempted to preserve the Union despite continuing conflicts over slavery? The Wilmot Proviso, the Compromise of 1850, or the Missouri Compromise? What political party was formed in order to unite several northern anti-slavery coalitions? The Democrats, the Republicans, or the Whigs? Number 48, who shared common beliefs with Frederick Douglass, William Lloyd Garrison, and John Brown? Were they Democrats, abolitionists, or fugitives? Number 49, which was one of the findings of the Supreme Court in the Dred Scott decision? Slaves were citizens, slaves were property, or slavery was a choice each state could make. Number 50, which state seceded first and why? Virginia, because it wanted Richmond to be the Confederate capital. Virginia, because it planned to attack Washington, D.C. and force federal changes to favor the states. Or was it South Carolina, because it believed the federal government violated its obligations to the states? Number 51, which border state was most important in keeping Washington, D.C. from being surrounded by Confederate states? West Virginia, Maryland, or Kentucky? Number 52, which side appeared to be stronger at the beginning of the Civil War? The South, because of its many miles of railroad tracks. The North, because of its well-established government and industry. The South, because of its agriculture and food supply. Number 53, what had Abraham Lincoln expected before the first Battle of Bull Run? He would have to recruit many more soldiers. The slaves would rebel and join the Northern forces. The South could easily be defeated. Number 54, what made the Battle of Antietam the single bloodiest day in American history? Marching troops forward in close order against newer, more accurate weapons. The amassing the largest armies ever in one place. The Union troops outnumbered Confederate troops 2-1. Number 55, what was one result of the Emancipation Proclamation? Maintaining meaning of the war. In theory, freeing slaves in all the Confederate states. Preventing the recruitment of blacks into the military. Number 56, what is the meaning of these words from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address? That the nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Did it mean that the nation would soon have freedom and be governed by the people? That democracy in the United States would last? Or that the people were essential to freedom and government? Number 57, what did the new technology and advanced weaponry of the Civil War lead historians to conclude? The soldiers on both sides were guilty of war crimes. The expense of the war paid off. It was the first modern war. Number 58, which was not an achievement of women during the Civil War? Establishing the American Red Cross, running for political office, developing a professional nursing corps. Number 59, use the graph to answer the following questions. Which side had more casualties during the Civil War? So use this graph here and answer the question, which side had more casualties during the Civil War? Was it the North, the South, or casualties were about the same? Number 60, following the Civil War, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were passed. What large issues did they address? Impeachment, equal protection, and war reparations, states' rights, slavery, and the Electoral College, or the last option, slavery, equal protection under the law, and voting rights. Number 61, what was the effect of the Homestead Act on Western settlement? It brought a great number of settlers to California. White Americans settled much of the Great Plains. It slowed the building of the railroads because the best land went to homesteaders. Number 62, how did Western settlement affect Native Americans? It brought income as settlers paid for their expertise. It didn't affect them since they remained on their reservations. It forced them from their lands. Number 63, which men were responsible for the development of the steel and oil industries in the United States? J.P. Morgan and Nelson Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller, or Gustav Swift and Robert Kraft? Number 64, how did the 19th century railroad influence today's corporate America? Railroads stressed the benefit of competition and opposed monopolies. Railroads were the first business to raise funds by issuing stocks and bonds. Railroads created an awareness of the importance of transportation. Number 65, what law was passed to eliminate trusts, monopolies, or any agreement that restrained trade? The Vanderbilt Banking Regulation, the Rockefeller Monopoly Act, or the Sherman Antitrust Act? Number 66, what union hoped to unify all workers in the nation? The Knights of Labor, American Federation of Labor, or the American Railway Union? Number 67, how did the immigration in the late 1800s differ from earlier immigration? Immigration was much easier because of faster processing. Early immigrants came largely from Northern and Western Europe, while immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe dominated in the late 1800s. Immigrants in the late 1800s came with greater wealth and more education than earlier immigrants. 68. Which group of presidents is in the correct chronological order? Washington, Jefferson, Jackson, Lincoln, Jefferson, Lincoln, Washington, Jackson, or Jackson, Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson? Number 69. Which group of innovations and inventors is in correct chronological order? Reaper, telephone, box camera, and cotton gin, or cotton gin, reaper, telephone, box camera, or the last option, telephone, cotton gin, reaper, box camera? Number 70, which statement is true of relations between Native Americans and the colonies or the United States between 1607 and 1900? Native Americans suffered hardships when Europeans first arrived in North America, but relations improved during the 1800s. Native Americans avoided contact and conflict with non-Indians in North America as much as possible. The desire for land led colonists and then the United States government and people to push Indians off their land and destroy their way of life. This concludes our reading of the midterm exam for U.S. history. Good luck on your exam, and please contact me with any questions at all.